The war in Ukraine continues. Russia, under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, has issued a new decree. This decree mandates a substantial increase in the country's military forces. By December, the Russian military will grow by 180,000 troops. This is not the first time Putin has expanded his military might since the conflict began. This latest decree marks the third wave of troop increases since February 2022. The move underscores the Kremlin's commitment to the ongoing conflict. The decree comes amidst a backdrop of escalating tensions and shifting battle lines. Just last month, Ukraine launched a bold offensive. Their target? The Kursk region, a Russian territory bordering Ukraine. This marked the first incursion into Russia since World War II, a stark reminder of the conflict's potential to widen. In response, Russia has intensified its efforts to repel Ukrainian forces from Kursk. Simultaneously, Russian forces are advancing in eastern Ukraine, particularly towards the strategically important town of Pokrovsk. With this latest increase, the Russian military will reach a staggering size. Nearly 2.4 million personnel will be under arms, including 1.5 million combat-ready troops. This represents a significant escalation of Russia's military capacity. It raises questions about Putin's long-term objectives in Ukraine and beyond. The international community watches closely, analysing the implications of this military build-up. This decree is not an isolated incident. It's part of a larger pattern of military expansion initiated by Putin. Understanding the previous troop increases is crucial to grasping the full scope of Russia's military strategy. The first formal decree to increase the size of the Russian military came in August 2022, nearly 6 months into the invasion of Ukraine. This decree ordered an increase of 137,000 personnel, bringing the official size of the Russian military to just over 2 million, including 1.15 million combat troops. This move was widely seen as a tacit acknowledgement that the war was not going according to plan. This initial troop increase was met with mixed reactions, both within Russia and internationally. Some saw it as a necessary step to achieve Russia's objectives in Ukraine, while others viewed it as a sign of weakness and desperation. Section 3. Decoding the build-up. Understanding the motivations behind Russia's troop increases requires analysing the evolving dynamics of the conflict itself. Each increase has coincided with specific challenges and setbacks faced by Russian forces on the battlefield. The initial invasion force, as we've seen, proved inadequate to achieve a swift victory. The August increase, while substantial, did not tip the scales decisively in Russia's favour. The latest decree, ordering an additional 180,000 troops, suggests that the Kremlin anticipates a protracted conflict. This increase may be aimed at replenishing depleted units, reinforcing defensive lines, or preparing for future offensives. It could also be part of a broader strategy to wear down Ukrainian forces and erode Western support for Kiev. Section 1. Kursk, a border under fire. The Kursk region, once a sleepy backwater, has become a focal point of the conflict. Ukraine's lightning attack shattered the illusion of Russian territorial integrity. This daring incursion exposed vulnerabilities in the Russian military. The Ukrainian incursion was swift and unexpected. The attack exposed weaknesses in Russia's border defences. Reinforcements were rushed to bolster defences. The situation in Kursk remains tense. Section 2. Pokrovsk. A prize in the east. Russian forces are advancing towards the strategically important town of Pokrovsk. Capturing Pokrovsk would solidify Moscow's control over the Donbass. Pokrovsk is crucial for supply routes, making it key in Ukraine's defense. The Kremlin has committed significant resources to its capture. The fighting around Pokrovsk has been intense. Russian forces, relying on artillery and air power, face fierce resistance. The town is heavily damaged and the humanitarian situation is dire. It is crucial to acknowledge the challenges of obtaining accurate and unbiased information about the situation on the ground in both Kursk and Pokrovsk. The fog of war hangs heavy over the conflict, obscuring the true nature of events and making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. Both sides engage in information warfare, disseminating propaganda and disinformation to advance their narratives. Independent verification of claims is often impossible, and even seemingly reliable sources can be influenced by bias or manipulation. Casualty figures are notoriously unreliable, and reports of battlefield successes or setbacks should be treated with caution. The conflict is fluid and dynamic, with the situation on the ground changing rapidly. Putin's decree to bolster Russia's troop strength appears to be a straightforward calculation: more soldiers to address battlefield losses. However, the strategic implications are far more nuanced and uncertain. Sheer numbers can provide a tactical advantage, but they are not a guarantee of victory. The effectiveness hinges on training quality, modern equipment, and the morale of new recruits. Logistical challenges and low morale could undermine the impact of increased manpower. The conflict in Ukraine has heavily taxed Russia's military resources. Putin's decree carries profound implications not only for the battlefield in Ukraine, but also for the domestic landscape within Russia itself. While the Kremlin has sought to shield the Russian populace from the true costs of the war, the impact of this latest troop increase will be difficult to conceal. The mobilization of hundreds of thousands of additional men will inevitably strain the Russian economy, potentially leading to labor shortages and further economic hardship for ordinary citizens. Furthermore, the decree risks exacerbating existing social and political tensions within Russia. The spectre of widespread conscription looms large, raising anxieties and fueling dissent among a population already grappling with economic uncertainty and the suppression of dissenting voices. The Kremlin's ability to manage these internal pressures, while simultaneously prosecuting a costly and protracted war, will be a critical test of its resilience. The ramifications of Putin's troop increase extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine and Russia, sending ripples of uncertainty and concern throughout the international community. The move has been met with condemnation from Western leaders, who view it as a dangerous escalation of the conflict and a threat to European security. The troop surge reinforces existing anxieties within NATO, prompting calls for increased defense spending and a strengthened military presence along the alliance's eastern flank. The conflict in Ukraine has already had a profound impact on the global geopolitical landscape, exacerbating existing tensions and highlighting the fragility of the post-Cold War order. The troop increase could further escalate these tensions, pushing the world closer to a new era of great power competition and confrontation. The potential for miscalculation and unintended escalation remains high, particularly as Russia grows increasingly isolated on the world stage. Beneath the surface of official pronouncements and state-controlled media, a palpable sense of unease has settled over Russian society. The war in Ukraine, once a distant conflict, is increasingly intruding upon the daily lives of ordinary citizens. The Kremlin's latest decree, mandating a significant troop increase, has only deepened this sense of anxiety and uncertainty. While the full impact of the mobilization has yet to be felt, the spectre of widespread conscription and economic hardship looms large. For many Russian families, the war has already hit close to home. The official silence surrounding casualties does little to assuage the fears of those with loved ones serving in the military. Whispers of losses and rumours of brutal fighting circulate through social networks and private conversations, painting a starkly different picture from the triumphant narratives peddled by state-controlled media. Faced with mounting internal pressures, the Kremlin has responded with a familiar playbook, tightening its grip on information and intensifying the crackdown on dissent. Independent media outlets have been silenced, their websites blocked, and their journalists harassed or imprisoned. Social media platforms, once vibrant spaces for discussion and debate, are now heavily monitored and censored, with any criticism of the war or the government swiftly met with retribution. Public demonstrations against the war, while initially met with a heavy-handed police response, have become increasingly rare. The Kremlin's message is clear: dissent will not be tolerated. Those who dare to challenge the official narrative risk arrest, prosecution, and lengthy prison sentences. Despite the Kremlin's best efforts, maintaining this facade of control is proving increasingly challenging. Subtle forms of resistance are emerging within Russian society. The internet remains a vital space for accessing alternative viewpoints. Virtual private networks and encrypted messaging apps are widely used to circumvent government censorship. Acts of civil disobedience are on the rise. Anti-war graffiti appears overnight, only to be swiftly painted over by the authorities. Underground networks distribute anti-war leaflets and posters. These acts of defiance represent a glimmer of hope in an increasingly repressive environment. The Russia-Ukraine conflict hangs precariously in the balance, poised on a knife's edge between escalation and negotiation. Putin's recent troop increase could embolden Russia to launch new offensives, seeking a decisive military victory. Such a move carries significant risks, potentially triggering a wider conflict involving NATO. Conversely, the troop surge could be a calculated gamble to strengthen Russia's negotiating position. As the conflict in Ukraine grinds on, the world watches with bated breath, acutely aware of the profound global implications of this conflict. The war has already shattered long-held assumptions about European security, exposed the fragility of the international order, and exacerbated existing geopolitical tensions. The outcome of this conflict will have far-reaching consequences, shaping the global landscape for generations to come. The human toll of the conflict is staggering. Thousands of civilians have been killed, and millions more have been displaced from their homes, seeking refuge in neighbouring countries and straining humanitarian resources. The war has created a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions, with no end in sight. The international community faces an urgent moral imperative to provide humanitarian assistance to those affected by the conflict and to hold those responsible for war crimes accountable for their actions. President Putin's decree to increase Russia's military forces by 180,000 troops casts a long shadow over the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This decision, presented as necessary for Russia's security, raises profound questions about the war's future and its global implications. The immediate impact remains to be seen. Will it embolden new offensives or serve as leverage in negotiations? The path ahead is fraught with peril. The risk of miscalculation and unintended escalation looms large. The international community must balance deterring aggression with finding a pathway to lasting peace. Diplomacy, backed by credible military deterrence, remains the only viable path forward. The conflict in Ukraine is a stark reminder of peace's fragility and our world's interconnectedness. It is a call to action for leaders and citizens alike to reaffirm our commitment to diplomacy and dialogue. The future hangs in the balance, and the choices we make today will determine the fate of Ukraine and the world we leave to future generations.